My daughter was involved in a car accident and was admitted to the city hospital. I received a call from the school homeroom teacher, and I was dumbfounded. My daughter was a part of my life, and I couldn't imagine what had happened to her and what would become of me. Panicked, I hurriedly called a car to the hospital. I got out of the car and ran toward the hospital on shaky legs, my knees bruised and battered. When I rushed into the emergency room, the doctor had just come out of surgery. He told me that my daughter had stabilized and would be transferred to a regular room after tonight. I finally breathed a sigh of relief and rushed to contact my husband, asking him to come to the hospital as well. However, when the call was answered, I heard an unfamiliar yet familiar female voice. "Who are you?" My grip on the phone tightened for a moment, forcing myself to maintain a normal, presentable expression. "Is this the new secretary? Please give the phone to Mr. Han." I took the initiative and put the phone down. The other party hummed, her voice delicate and young, with a hint of joy and triumph. After my husband, Han Shinfu, took the phone, I told him about my daughter. But he answered me carelessly. "I'm busy today, the company still has documents to deal with, so I'm not coming. Let me know if you want to buy anything. I'll have my secretary buy it and send it home." I resisted the urge to scold him for being heartless and inhumane, biting my lower lip as it bled, and finally squeezed out a sentence through my teeth. "Good, you should also take care of your health. I will take care of my daughter in the hospital." Ambiguous breathing sounds came from the other end of the phone. I knew what they were doing and didn't even need to think about it. The beeping of my cell phone made me hang up, and I angrily slammed my new iPhone against the wall, shattering the screen. "Sorry." I gathered my thoughts, picked up my phone, apologized to passersby in the hallway, and silently walked outside the ICU room. Through the screen I watched my daughter in her hospital bed. She was still so young, yet she had suffered this disaster because of her father's betrayal in her marriage. She hadn't done anything wrong, so why should she be maligned by the adult world? I tilted my head back, quit the nurse's phone, and asked my secretary to get me 2 new cell phones to send to the hospital. When he left, I called a number that was familiar but not recorded in my address book. "Sister Chen, again, you want me to follow that mistress, catch the evidence, and then fight for the property, ah?" A mechanical voice came from the other side of the phone with a hint of sarcasm and ridicule. I didn't bullshit and made an anonymous transfer to him for $50,000. "This time it's not about you stalking and filming the cheating." I paused for a moment and looked back at my daughter, who was still unconscious. "Go find out for me who hit the car accident that happened at the city's first elementary school today and who directed it." The anonymous hacker's attitude got much better after that, and he hung up the phone and started investigating for me. I tilted my head back and leaned against the ward corridor, feeling regret for the first time as to why I hadn't been more impulsive in the first place, and for the first time remorseful as to why I hadn't torn my face off in the first place, choosing instead to hold my tongue. I have always known that Han Shinfu has another woman outside. From the beginning of his first betrayal, I have noticed. I was originally a very talented person as well, and although my family wasn't wealthy enough to give me the best undergraduate education, I still got into graduate school at Stanford University. However, before I was ready to leave the country, I unexpectedly became pregnant with a child that belonged to Han Shinfu. For the sake of this child, I had to marry him early. And this marriage was just the beginning of all the tragedies. Han Shinfu to me, just out of hobby. Once the novelty of the past, he began to spend the day outside. He is like home temptation in the Hongshuxian, downright scum. However, due to the prenuptial agreement, I can't divorce him or I will lose custody of my daughter and all my property. For so many years, for the sake of my daughter, I have been patient, turning a blind eye and not caring about his betrayal. A tone soon sounded on my cell phone, an anonymous MMS message. The person I contacted was a reputable hacker in our circle of so-called noblewomen, specializing in uncovering other people's privacy. Through the backstage screenshots that the hacker sent me, I saw that Han Xinfu's mistress, Yuwu, instructed an asshole who owed an online loan to drive into my daughter, and if it wasn't for the fact that my daughter's life was so strong that the teachers at the school called the police and an ambulance in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. I didn't dare to imagine what the consequences would be like. Sister Chen, can you continue to endure this? Even the hacker felt unable to watch. This person is too hateful. Why don't you give me this order and I'll help you get her the death penalty in public opinion? No need. I almost pinched my phone to hold back my anger, forcing myself to keep my sanity. I'll handle this matter myself. I wanted her and Han Xinfu to kill each other and die together. As for picking out the person who provoked them to kill each other, I already had an idea. I opened up Weibo and skillfully found a private account with only a single-digit number of followers. A junior who had been in Han Xinfu's charter a year ago, Zhen loved. She was the perfect knife hand to trigger this self-inflicted murder. I knew all about Jinqing's family. Her family had lost her father after reorganization. Her stepmother lived with a brother she had nothing to do with, and she had been sexually abused by this tyrannical brother, forcing her to give up her studies to work to support her brother and stepmother. All it takes to get close to a girl like this is a few small tricks. I faced the mirror, hammered out some bruises, and quickly established a connection with her as a poor noblewoman suffering from domestic violence. Jinlov's stepmother and brother are undoubtedly two vampires. Han Xinfu gave her all the money was robbed by them. Although she is a third party, but still have to struggle to make a living. No education, can only be a bottom of the beauty girl. Becoming a confidant of such a girl only requires some money and patience. A few high commission cards and a few tutorials on adult self-testing soon made this girl treat me as her own sister, and she would confide in me no matter what problems she encountered. Sister, I really don't know what to do now. I can't find anyone else to discuss, I can only come to you. After doing a facial treatment, Jinqi tightly pulled my hand, her gaze sad and anxious, one hand covering her forehead, tears swirling in her eyes. I sighed and sighed. I asked her what had happened. She was silent, and only after a long time did she take a deep breath and whispered to me, Sister, I'm pregnant. What should I do? This was such an unexpected, happy event. I superficially congratulated her and incidentally gave her another bank card as a way to add some festive atmosphere. Then I asked a few industry people out for dinner. In this circle, intimate address treats the sisters of the wall, many people on one side of the cordiality, behind the scenes, but the plotting and scheming heart much. In particular, some of the business dealings with Han Xinfu company executive's wife, on the surface to flatter me that is the chairman of the wife, behind the scenes, but I mocked me as a lover outside the yellow face. They were the most suitable loudspeakers to spread the news. I first showed off my 2-carat diamond ring and $5 million emerald necklace in front of them, and saw their jealous expressions, as if they had many thorns in their eyes. Then I turned the conversation around and introduced the presence of Zhen. I've recently met a very outstanding little girl. Although she doesn't come from a wealthy background, she has been concentrating on her studies. It's really not easy. A few loudspeakers coped with my words, but I noticed that when I mentioned the beauty parlor where Zhen Mei was, their eyes immediately lit up. It looked like they should have known about Zhen Er's existence. I praised Jinny so much that they basically couldn't help but stifle their laughter, almost causing their livers to ache from laughing so hard. I think they must have wanted to see me laugh, so they didn't have the good sense to tell me that Zhen was actually the woman my husband was keeping outside. I let out a heavy dose of news in a smooth manner. I hope you guys will support me too. Go and get a card from her. She's pregnant and needs money, and your cards will bring in performance commission. Once the news spread, I visibly saw the eyes of several tuba speakers light up, as if they were scavengers who had seen rotten meat, and drool couldn't help but flow from the corners of their mouths. Looking at their expressions, I knew that this news would definitely spread throughout the circle within 3 days. Junior Yuwu, who had been trying to rise to prominence, also had a high level of concern for this circle, and she would naturally get this news as well. As for my daughter, She is regarded as a thorn in Yu Wu's side and is determined to get rid of her. And what will happen to Zhenyi? What kind of treatment would a woman who is younger than her, prettier than her, more favored by Han Xinfu than her, and pregnant, suffer? I poured myself a glass of red wine. Under the lights, the red wine swayed like blood. It was as red as the blood that flowed out of Zhenyi's body in the TV report. Yu Mu was even more vicious than I expected. The first time she learned the news, she brought her family to block Zhenyi's door and beat her alive until she miscarried. This shameless mistress seduced my husband, and now she wants to force me to step aside by virtue of the child in my belly. I was my husband's supporter during his most difficult time, accompanying him through the hard times, and now that his career has taken off, this shameless bitch has seduced my husband? If she is not punished, is there any justice left in this world? She really hit the nail on the head, almost speaking my inner pain. But Yu Mu, what qualifications do you have to say such things? Is it because for so many years Han Xinfu's legal wife, rarely showed up, so you justified impersonating me and committing a blood debt? Seeing the online tirades against Han Xinfu's legitimate wife, I calmly quit shivering and carried a bag of tonic to the hospital. Today is the day my daughter was discharged from the hospital. Looking at her, who had finally regained her vigor, I was finally able to relax and smile. Mommy, that auntie is so pitiful. My daughter pointed upstairs at Zhenyi, who was about to jump off the building. I was startled, and hurriedly asked the special assistant to send my daughter back home, rushing upstairs to pull Zhenyi down from the window. Sister, what can't you think of? How can you not value your life? There was no blood on Zhenyi's exquisitely beautiful face, and when she saw that the visitor was me, she squeezed out a barely feeble smile. Sister, it's you. I didn't expect that the one who pulled me back was you. As if she had a full belly of grievances, she jumped into my arms and bawled. Crying until the end, she whispered with tears in her voice. Sis, I had a miscarriage, and I can't even go for justice. I'm the mistress. I'm morally unworthy to go for justice. I stroked the back of her head and whispered consolingly, my lips curling up on my face behind her back. The plan had worked. After gaining her trust, it was time to swing this knife out. Zhenyi cried and fainted in my arms. I paid for her to be transferred to a separate ward in the VIP. When she woke up, I was peeling an apple for her at her bedside. The red-colored apple was peeled into the shape of a bunny rabbit. This was my little trick to coax my daughter to take her medicine. When Zhenyi woke up, I gave her the bunny ground. She pinched the bunny apple and sobbed uncontrollably. Sis, you're the best person to me since Dad left. Like a mother, I soothed her with gentle patience. Tired of crying, she leaned into my arms and talked about the beginning and end of her friendship with Han Xinfu. At that time, my brother committed a crime. I thought at the time that if he died, I would be relieved. But my stepmother didn't want to. She withheld my ID card and forced me to accompany Boss Han. If I don't go, she'll sell me to Southeast Asia. I was scared. I had no choice, so I became Mr. Han's underground lover. Mr. Han was very generous to me, but my mom and brother wouldn't let me have a good time at all. I was just a tool to make money and get laid in their eyes. Sis, I want to study, sis, I really want to study. But I don't have a chance in this life. Zhenyi cried like a child. I had mixed feelings. Back then, I was also a girl who longed to study. But a premeditated and unplanned pregnancy ended my future path to school. She's like me, but not like me. If what happened to her had happened to me, I probably would have chosen to die. Social death, disrepute, miscarriage, and lifelong infertility. Jen Love was also taught the lesson of meddling in other people's marriages. I weighed my options and finally, with a clench of my teeth, I told her, Emotion, this justice, you still have to get it back. You can't say anything about you being a mistress, morally unjustified. That Mr. Han you mentioned, my family's mouth knows him and has business dealings. I've seen Mrs. Han when I accompanied him to Mr. Han's birthday banquet. You, not that woman who hit you at all. All the sisters in our circle know that that woman is also a mistress. I took out my phone and randomly pulled up a few pictures of Han Xinfu and his cousin who had emigrated abroad. Zhen Qi held my cell phone, trembling with anger and raged. How can the surname you do this to me? I will sue her. I hurriedly pressed her. You sue her is also useless. Make a big deal. At most she and Mr. Han cut off. Before the money she raked in the hands of a penny is also not a lot. She has almost no loss. A different city can also pretend to be a network of rich and famous women. Hearing my words, the originally still furious Jinqi paralyzed on the bed and sighed. Sister, then what do you say? I smiled at her. It's hard for a hero to be a beauty. Zhen Mei's comprehension was quick. Or rather, a woman who is bent on revenge. Her ability to learn and comprehend is difficult for ordinary people to reach. Soon, she recovered her body and resumed her dealings with Han Xinfu as if nothing had happened. Just will intentionally or unintentionally mention how arrogant and domineering Yuwu is. Of course, in her mouth, Yuwu was Han Xinfu's rightful wife. Han Xinfu started to make the mistake of suppressing her to see that she didn't fight with Yuwu, but soon, Yuwu was getting over the line under my and her intentional connivance. I also took the opportunity to take out Han Xinfu's cell phone and asked Yuwu to come to the company. No matter how hard Han Xinfu plays with women behind the scenes, he is a good man and a good gentleman externally, and the company's image is deeply linked to his personal image. And I, as his legal wife, the business partners know each other. If he burst out of the derailment, I thought of the company's stock price shock, laughing and letting Jinlove blow pillow wind, aggrieved and took out the SMS stone hammer. Han Xinfu saw the text message. Yufog screaming to publicly dump her in the company's slapped remarks, scared Tai cannot be hit, hurriedly drove to the company. I, on the other hand, just happened to be carrying a can of lotus root soup, sitting in the VIP room on the second floor, watching how Han Xinfu and Yuwu were dogfighting in the corner downstairs. Han Xinfu slapped Yuwu's face with a not-so-small force, and Yuwu's face was swollen up height. Did I give you face? When did I allow you to come to the company and make trouble? Yumu aggrievedly takes out her cell phone. It was you who texted me to come. There will be no evidence on her cell phone. I took a disposable cell phone that I bought from a hacker at a high price and used abroad for Bitcoin transactions. It burns when it's sent and doesn't leave any traces on the network at all. So when Yuwu took out her cell phone, there was no text message from me about her coming to the company. Han Xinfu was angry and dropped her cell phone. Where's the text message? Why don't you take it out and show it to me? You foghead cold sweat. Squatting down to pick up the phone, trembling flipped text messages, mouth muttered. How can it be? Obviously there. How can there be? I sneered upstairs. Han Xinfu kicked her in the head. Enough. Nonsense. You simply make me sick. If it wasn't for the fact that you're still pregnant, you'd be out of the house I bought you by now. Yuwu finally panicked when she saw that Han Xinfu wanted to cut her off. Her mouth compensated for her caution, and she fled in ashes. I intentionally took pictures of her being slapped by Han Xinfu, waiting to hammer her later for Zhenit. And now, I straightened my dress and carried the lotus root soup and knocked on Han Xinfu's office door. When he saw me, he couldn't even hide the panic on his face. I deliberately asked him, "Who is that girl just now? Why are you so mean to others? Girls also want face-off." I am the most gentle and virtuous wife of Han Xinfu. I have never asked him about his affairs, and I am trusting and loyal to him. Being suddenly interrogated by me, Han Xinfu scratched his ears to find a reason, and was afraid of fooling me. Especially, now is still in the company, he cannot be angry with me. Once he loses his temper with me, I'll have a good reason to make a big deal out of it. At that time, once the media reports a deep investigation, the news of his cheating will be known to everyone. and the company's image is deeply tied to his personal image. Han Xinfu couldn't afford to gamble. For a long time, he only said with a cruel heart, "It's an escort who pestered me, wife. You are aware of those who play along in the business world, I am." I took the opportunity to show my sagacity and reached out to cover his mouth. "You don't have to say it, I believe you." He was sheepishly relieved and said yes to me as he sipped his lotus root soup. I went along with it and then came up with the plan I had already thought of. Hubby, I heard from a few sisters that there are plans to develop the land outside the city in the future. You know, Warner's husband is a public servant. Although it is said that the development is still a long time away, but I also want to make the first move. I want to leave the land in the future to Nui Nui as a dowry. He froze. But the land outside the city, it's not a small area. Why don't we just forget about it? How could I forget about it? He is now the moment when he is the most vain to me. After this village, there is no such store. I hurriedly wiped my tears. Hubby, you also know that I haven't asked for anything over the years, but you are too busy. Last time when your daughter had a car accident, you were too busy to go to the hospital. I'm really worried that in the future you'll be too busy to back up your daughter. And it's not like you don't know how arrogant the boys in this circle are. I'm worried that Nui Nui doesn't have a dowry to fall back on. She's being bullied by her in-laws. I purposely cried out, crying so loudly that I made sure I could be heard clearly by the eaters outside the office. Han Xinfu was so scared that his heart almost flew out of his throat, rushing to hug me to softly comfort me, and also carefully wiping my tears. Well, how could I disregard Nui Nui? It's just that that piece of land will empty all of our large cash flow, and after that we'll be left with only living expenses. I want to be left with just living expenses. For the sake of the child, it's nothing. For us to suffer a little, I made a gesture to cry again. Han Xinfu, scared to death, rushed to let Secretary Zhang to go to do a good job of buying the land. I got the proof of purchase before breaking into tears, put away his finished lotus root soup back home. Turning my head, I covered the name of the head of household on the purchase certificate and sent it to Jenny. This is what I found in Mrs. Han's circle of friends. You take the picture and go irritate Yuwu. Keep it so that she'll be so jealous that her plasmic walls will separate and she'll make a big fuss again. And in the end, make a fuss until Mr. Han gets annoyed with him, and also make a fuss until Mrs. Han recovers her marital property gift. Jin Love is now full of vengeance. Will not even think that Mrs. Han will not let go of her as a junior. Take the proof of purchase to go to Han Tae-Yuwook. I booked a VIP seat in the cafe in advance, and while drinking tea, I watched the two women tear the blood into the river. Jin Love put that Yuwu was Han Xinfu kicked in the face. There is a stern rebuke, humiliating video screen dumped on her face. The expression on her face to be more mocking. Is not claimed to hit the junior, not claimed to be the original match of the bitter master. How the public, by the husband to beat like this, No way. Not the so-called legal wife of Mr. Han, was domestically abused, did not dare to put a fart, right? Why did I hear from the employees of Mr. Han's headquarters that Mr. Han drove away a chaperone who wanted to get to the top? The newly made prosthesis on Yuwu's nose is all askew with anger. Furious, she wanted to make a move on Jenny. After Zhenqi realized that she wasn't Han Xinfu's wife in the legal sense, she was no longer vindictive towards Yumu, and backhanded a slap on Yumu's face. What are you pretending in front of me? Before I was feeling sorry for someone else's wife of Mr. Han, so I let you beat me. Now that I know that you're nothing but a vixen outside as well, do you think I'll still put up with you? The two women were tearing each other apart. I slowly drank tea on a VIP seat on the side, and incidentally ordered an extra tea snack for Zhenqi to eat later. The battle was fierce and ended with Yuwu's mouth being beaten bloody. Yuwu, pampered for many years, simply cannot beat in the bottom of the social crawling and struggling to survive Jinlove, and finally pointed at Jinlove's nose and put harsh words, snapped and left. I greeted Jinlove over to eat refreshments, take her to the hospital to ice bandage was Yu Fog scratch out of the wound after instructing her to keep Han Xinfu today. On the other hand, I once again made an appointment with the Plastic Sisterhood's Wives group for afternoon tea. A few loud hailers probably heard about you Wu and Jin E tearing each other apart and rushed to see my jokes. How could I let them see the joke? While pretending to be completely unaware of Han Xinfu's cheating, I took out the real estate certificate that Han Xinfu bought for me with only my daughter's name on it. If you ask me, our old Han is still different from the average person. He values both men and women equally. Our daughter is still young, and old Han is preparing a dowry for her. A few loud hailers envied and complimented me on the surface, but behind my back, I was afraid that they had made me a straw man, piercing my heart with 10,000 arrows. One of the loudspeakers sent a friend on the spot, shady and sour. This is not important. What matters is that you Misty saw it. Didn't she want to steal the family fortune? I'm going to stimulate her. Let her see how much Han Xinfu values my daughter. Only then can I force her to do something even crazier. At that time, the criminal law won't spare her. I arranged for the hacker to monitor her every move and turn my head to go home to accompany my daughter. I didn't expect to see Han Xinfu holding his daughter nestled on the sofa watching cartoons as soon as I entered. Seeing me back, Han Xinfu in front of his daughter pretending to be a piece of deep love, embracing me to show love. I forced to endure nausea, pretending to be a good wife, for him to organize his collar and hair. During dinner, Han Xinfu suddenly asked me, "Why did you suddenly send a friend circle about buying land?" My hand holding the chopsticks tightened, my face not showing the slightest bit. Isn't this to show off how much our daughter is valued, so that those difficult women will read it and advise their own family's bastard boys not to bully our daughter, and also to warn them that our family won't be short just because our daughter is a girl? We value her just as much. The reason I gave was sufficient, perfect, and very much in line with my image as a housewife whose heart is laid on her child. Han Xinfu looked at me critically for a small half-day, and finally withdrew his eyes. By the looks of it, it should be believed. I was thinking of saying something to change the subject, when Han Xinfu's cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID. His face changed greatly. Perfunctory Mia important project after fleeing, went to the balcony. That's a coincidence, isn't it? In order to prevent the family cat from escaping from prison and jumping down to the 29th floor, I installed surveillance on the balcony. In the video, Han Xinfu's face is not very good, storming out and yelling at the phone. Didn't I say don't call to bother me if nothing's wrong? Do you know how much trouble you've caused me lately? The Yu-Mu on the other end of the phone was aggrieved, and by the sound of her voice, she should have been crying her eyes out. Fu, how can you say that about me? Han Xinfu impatiently turned off the phone and was about to walk into the living room when the phone rang again. He cursed furiously. What the hell do you want? Commit a crime, you. The other end of the phone gave a beat and dropped a heavy bomb. Fu, I'm pregnant. I saw the video. Han Xinfu gave a beat and seemed to have his mind come to a standstill. Fu, this is the crystallization of love between us. You come over to see. This child can't be born, beat it. Han Xinfu coldly told her, you know how important my image is. If you dare to have a child behind my back, you know my methods. I hooked my lips and sighed at Yumu's naivety. But next, I couldn't laugh. Yuwu was desperate. Fu, I went to Hong Kong to check. This is a boy. I know you always wanted a boy. That's why I told you. I know it's difficult for your wife to give birth. Your family is such a big family business. You can't let a girl inherit it in the future, right? Fu, I'm not forcing you to ask for any title. I've followed you for so many years. I've never made a scene in front of your wife. This time is really. Fu, you also need an heir. I don't ask you to divorce your wife. I only ask you so that this child can open his eyes to see his father, and in the future, he can give you as a helper to inherit the family business. Your wife and daughter were born to enjoy the blessings. It's better to let this kid fight in the company. I don't want any title. I only ask you to let this kid retire me in the future. Fu, I beg you, let this child be born. Han Xinfu was silent. I rubbed his face on the screen, much like my fingertips were knives, and the blade cut him into 1,000 pieces. I knew that his heart was moved for the sake of his son. When he returned to the living room, I had long since turned off the prosecution video without moving. Han Xinfu hugged his daughter and asked her, "Naya, in the future when Dad is old, what will you do?" Nui, a faction of naive, touched Han Xinfu's face. Nui to Daddy old age. In the future, Nui busy company things. Dad at home with Mom watching cartoons. Han Xinfu laughed out loud when he heard this, and the words that came out of his mouth made me laugh. He said, "Your daughter is Daddy's baby. You can enjoy your happiness later. Don't worry about the company. Daddy will take care of it. We'll take care of it. You've decided to give it to your son, but you still value sons over daughters." My hand slipped, and the plate I was about to put into the dishwasher fell to the ground and shattered. My fingers were cut open by the broken porcelain, and blood dripped from my fingertips onto the floor. Han Xinfu heard the noise and rushed to the kitchen to bandage me. "Don't do this kind of housework. Just find a housekeeper. You've suffered after me. It'll be good to enjoy the blessings in the future. I'll be happy to enjoy my happiness." How did Han Xinfu have the face to say the words "enjoy happiness"? I retracted my hand and pretended to be docile and soft. Taking care of this home is also something I should do, and there are some things I don't feel comfortable handing over to the housekeeping ants. By the way, off book, in a couple days I want to transfer the shares in my name to Nui. Is it okay to share some of your shares with me? I saw his face stiffen. It didn't take a guess to know that he wanted to divulge the shares to that unborn son without God's knowledge and stealing from him. Nui is still young, there's no rush. Which is not in a hurry. You don't know, today I had dinner with those wives. They gave me such a big face on the basis of their family being a kid. I deliberately interrupted Han Xinfu's words and added another fired. One by one, they also said that in the future, our family's company will still be given to outsiders. Then I won't agree. I'm going to let them see that our family's inamorata is much stronger than the average kid, and in the future, their family's precious brats will still have to work for our inamorata. I want to see Han Xinfu in the end. There is no conscience. Han Xinfu hesitation stalled me. Shares of these things are not urgent. I now have a big project in hand. If there is now a change in shares so that the partners know, I cannot stand awe. My heart sank to the bottom. I lost the bet. Listening to Zhenyi said, recently Han Xinfu went to her place rarely. When you go less, you give less money to. When I arrived at Jinqing's house, the door was hidden, and the gap was just enough to see her collapsed on the ground, her hair pulled by a rough man, and she screamed in pain. A middle-aged woman with high cheekbones and a mean-looking face on the sides slapped her twice on both cheeks. "What are you crying for? Cry again and I'll cut your tongue out." "Mom, can't cut it, still counting on her to serve Mr. Han. Can't move her before he plays rotten and throws it away. Can I not know about this? I'm still not afraid that if she screams too hard, those nosy neighbors will call the police." After saying that, the mean woman kicked Zhenyi again. "Rubbish thing, you didn't even keep Mr. Han's child. Do you know how much money this child can exchange for your brother? Your brother's wife's book, your brother's matrimonial home. This child can get it for him. It's just that you, this loser, couldn't keep the child and lost the man, and now you can't even enlist Mr. Han." The mean woman's saliva sprayed on Zhenyi's face. "In these 2 days, I don't care what method you use, you must enlist Mr. Han again and give your brother $500,000 or I want you to look good." Zhenyi is like a helpless child, being abused and beaten so much that she doesn't dare to speak. I couldn't watch and push the door in. "Stop it, you guys." Jin Emotion's brother was a rough man, and when he saw me, he subconsciously wanted to make a move. But his mom had the eyesight to see the Hermes I was carrying and immediately greeted me with a smile. "Yo, this lady you are?" I think she took me for a proper wife who came to the door to settle a score. Although I really am not. But, for the sake of Zhenyi's safety, I can't blow my own cover either. Otherwise, after taking the breakup fee from me, Jenny will no longer have any value, and I can't even think of what kind of heartless mother and son of them will do. I can't even think of it. I'm Jeanne M's old patron, looking for her to make a face. Hearing that I'm not the rightful wife, Jenny's mother immediately chilled her face. So that's how it is. Although she had a cold face, she still had some scruples when she looked at the nameplate on me, and her words were always a few points of politeness. This lady, this is our family matter. I advise you to better not meddle. Jenny's brother pinched his fingers at me, squeezing them with a clicking sound. To this kind of person who forgets his own interests, threats and reasoning are useless. One must lure. I took out my cell phone and transferred 50,000 to Jinqing on the spot. Jinlov's cell phone immediately rang a beep dot. The face of Jenny's mom turned 180 degrees, immediately becoming fawning. Yo ma'am, you this? This is really generous. You're looking for Jenny for something, right? I'll leave you alone. They got the money and drew blood, glaring fiercely at Jin-yi before smiling and leaving. I closed the door and unlocked it. Jenner lowered her head and spoke in a jarred voice. Sis, let you see the bad side. I iced her red, swollen face, accidentally rubbing off the broken skin, causing her to inhale in pain. Your mom and your brother, have they always treated you this way? She let out a bitter laugh. There was helplessness in her voice, more despair. It's been like that for years. That was the first time I saw the empty, as if hollowed out, Jen Chan looked. The girl who had saved up money to try to study seemed to be just a layer of pretense, an illusory skin. She was hateful and pitiful. After paying a terrible price, I can't hate her, more pitied. Perhaps, I also hate Han Xinfu in my heart, so my infidelity, simply cannot do me harm. I just can't tolerate his infidelity to plague my daughter. I comforted Jinlove a few words, again and again deliberation. I asked her, do you want to get out of your present life? She nodded and shook her head. Sister, you can't help me. I reached out and pressed a finger to her lips, lowering my voice to her ear. What if both of these people die? Her eyes widened, but she quickly calmed down again. Sis, this plan, is it really okay? I nodded. She was silent for a long time before she gave up everything and squeezed my wrist, like a dying person holding on to driftwood. Sister, I thank you. I transferred another 30,000 to her, so that she could stabilize the two unstable factors of her brother and stepmother during this period of time, as well as dropping bait for them. These two people must be gotten rid of. Fish is not qualified to discuss with the chef whether to steam or braise tonight. They could only choose whether or not to bite the bait. But these two greedy fish are obviously reckless in biting the bait. Before I left, Jinchi suddenly called out to me. Sis, who the hell are you? She was a smart girl and wouldn't be able to not see it. I turned my head sideways and stretched out a finger. Shidash. Don't say it. She smiled at me and didn't continue to ask. I arranged for her and was thinking about how to get Han Xinfu to come over here a few more times. I didn't expect my daughter's school to call me out of the blue. It said that my daughter had swallowed an overdose of sleeping pills in the school infirmary. My brain is blank, almost fainted. When I rushed to school, the class teacher persuaded me to calm down. Today, a group of senior boys came to the school infirmary to play a prank, and it was thanks to them that they temporarily replaced all the drugs in the bottle of sleeping pills with candies. Otherwise, my daughter might not have been saved. I didn't understand why my daughter, who was doing fine, suddenly couldn't think straight. It wasn't until her first words when she woke up that I realized that I was really too arrogant and had belittled the enemy. My daughter hugged me and cried her eyes out. Mom, Auntie said that Dad doesn't want me because of me, and doesn't want Mom either, and is going to marry her and the brother in her belly. Mommy, is it true that if I die, Daddy won't leave you? I soothed my daughter, my eyes cold. No, baby. Daddy won't leave mommy without you. Damn him, and that evil woman you missed. I sent my daughter to my parents' home. My parents, although to just working class, are both retired teachers. There are no patriarchal sentiments, much less like Han Xinfu's mom, who gives me looks at every turn. I originally wanted to more you fog a period of time, but she shouldn't touch my bottom line. My daughter is my scales, touch her. You Wu must die. Take Han Xinfu with you. Don't you want to be Mrs. Han? Good. I'll give you the chance. I immediately arranged another sisterly tea party, and the participants, naturally, were those big mouths. They were already there, and I started wiping my tears. What should we do? I've heard people say that our old Han cheated on me. My plastic sisters have been waiting for 3 or 4 years for these words. Since the birth of my daughter, they have been waiting for my jokes. Only that I, Mrs. Han, have been doing such a flawless job that they have not been able to find a chance to see my jokes. Now, how could they let go of this good opportunity to stick a needle in me? Sister-in-law, don't cry. What's going on? 2 days ago, that mistress came to my door with a big belly and laughed at me for being a hen that can't lay eggs. She said her name was Yu Wu, a woman who's been with old Han for 5 or 6 years, and our daughter is only 7 years old. I purposely emphasized Yu Wu's name in order to make this group of plastic sisters highlight her when they show off in their circle of friends afterward, using her to step on me. This was the only way to make Yu Wu completely run into Han Xinfu's scales. She also said that she has a baby in her belly, and that she'll kick us mother and daughter out of the house in the future. She also said that if I kneel down for her, she'll consider letting Nui Nui work as a nanny in the house and promise not to let Nui Nui starve to death. Why is my life so bitter? I cried like a pear and wiped my tears with a gesture, letting the hacker who was secretly observing quietly shoot the video. When this group of plastic sisters had seen enough jokes, the hacker waved at me, signaling that she had finished filming. I perfunctory this group of plastic sisters, sent a message ambiguous grief pain friend circle. This group of plastic sisters have liked the message forwarded. At the same time, I let the hacker hack into the background of one of the plastic sisters, cut off a good picture, followed by the video together with the circle of friends. In less than half a day, Han Xinfu derailed the news airborne hot search list top. Good man image completely collapsed. For a time, the company's stock price shook. I can already imagine Han Xinfu's exasperation. Hearing the sound of a car engine turning off in the yard, I picked up the phone, and on the other end was Zheng Qi, and just as soon as I got through, I started acting and complaining. The door opened and footsteps sounded. I also mobilized all my emotions at that moment and cursed at the other end of the phone. I really misjudged you. After so many years of being sisters, you guys are making a joke out of me. Even if that woman called you who came to show off in front of me with a big belly, I didn't make a sound. Just privately looking for you guys to complain. This is the private matter of our 2 families. The family scandal is not publicized. What do you mean the video was not shot by you guys? It wasn't you guys who filmed it. Then you guys explained to me. What's the matter with that screenshot of the circle of friends? If you guys weren't behind it, who else could it be? I yelled out and then whimpered. It's okay for me to suffer a little. Who's a couple that doesn't stumble through life? But how can you make a big deal out of this in the name of what's best for me? What? You said that the mistress called you who still looks for you guys. She stimulates you to show off? Wouldn't you guys have approached me first to discuss it and had to expose her? It's our Han family that will lose face. After cursing this, the sound of footsteps resounded again, and the gate was snapped with an earth-shattering sound. It's done. I watched Han Xinfu's car speed away and texted Jinjit. Jenny sent a text message to Yumu as I taught her. Do you like the gift I sent you? It's so easy to impersonate you. Then she followed what I told her and texted her rotten gambler brother and stepmother who lost money in gambling today. Mom, brother, Mr. Han's other mistress is coming to my door to beat me to death. forcing me to separate from Mr. Han and telling me to spit out all my money or else she'll sue our whole family for extortion. Finally, she slapped herself while screaming in terror and sending audio to Han Shinfut. Mr. Han, help! Yumu is going to beat me to death. She came to my house and is going to publicize me. After doing all this, Jenny put her cell phone in a corner and turned on the live broadcast. Arranged all this, I picked up the phone on the side of the guard to resume normal schooling daughter to do homework. In the video, the door of Zhang Yi's house that didn't have time to close was kicked open. The prosthesis on Yumu's face was completely knocked out of alignment. She enters and grabs Zhang Yi by the face, snapping 2 slaps. Good you little bitch, gave you face, how dare you shade me? It was you who pretended to be me and went to Han Shinfu's wife to show off, wasn't it? Zhang doesn't fight back, just dodges. I didn't. Han Shinfu even came to my door to beat me up, and you still dare to argue. Zhang cried out as she dodged. Our identities were originally unseemly. I was sold to Mr. Han by my stepmother and brother. I'm resigned to my fate. But how can you take the initiative to destroy Mr. Han's marriage? Bah, if Han Shinfu wasn't afraid of problems with the company's stock price, he would have broken up with that yellow-faced woman long ago. Mrs. Han will be me sooner or later. This time you made a scene, causing me to take a lot of heat. Being Mrs. Han will have to play for a few more years. Little bitch, do you know how much money I have to lose? You're the one who seduced Han Shinfu with this vixen face of yours, aren't you? I'll tear your face off. Yu Wu grabbed the clippers and slashed at Zhang Yi's face. Right at this moment, Zhang Yi's brother arrived at. He sees Zhang Yi's face. His money tree is going to be destroyed by Yu Wu, and steps forward. Dead bitch, try touching my money tree for a second. Zhang Yi's mom adds another kick and backhandedly slaps Zhang Yi in the face. Don't you know that our family is counting on you to climb up to Mr. Han to make money? Why don't you know how to protect that face of yours? Yumu was kicked over twice and her stomach slammed hard into the coffee table. Instantly her lower body was drenched in blood. She screamed miserably and took out her cell phone and shouted. Not a moment later, a group of young men who looked bad, tattooed with green dragons and white tigers, surrounded Zhang Yi's house. Yumu covered her stomach and shouted, "Send me to the hospital and then get these bitches killed." A few youngsters were young and impetuous with no control over their mouths, and 2 words enraged Zhang Yi's short-tempered brother. He stepped forward and dragged Yu Wu not to go. Yu Wu under the body bleeding more than, not sent to the hospital to stop the bleeding. I'm afraid that life is in danger. But Shinlov's brother and stepmother, a tricky one evil, are not good to mess with the Lord. Soon, it developed from verbal to armed combat, and at that moment, one of the young men moved the knife. He only threatened. Zhang Yi took the opportunity to yell out, afraid to yell out when her grumpy brother's nerves were at their most tense and sensitive. Don't kill my brother. Where could Zhengqi's brother stand this stimulus? Killing Red Eyes at the moment. White knife in, red knife out, cut off several small young people in a row. The young man is also angry. Go to the kitchen to pick up the knife to cut up. Just at this time, the door opened. You fog to see Han Shinfu, immediately as if to see the backbone. She has just weakly called out Jinxiao's brother as killing red-eyed demon. Deadlifting the knife rushed over. What will be the result of a person who kills red eyes and touches irrational people? I open the jitterbug. The first hot list is exactly Junior door provocation. Junior brother killed 5 people. Cheating man was stabbed 24 knife critically ill near death. The melon eaters of Shakyam are always like bloodthirsty hyenas, the first time to go deep into the truth of all kinds of hot events. Although Han Shinfu's face is coated, I recognize his figure, even if it turns to dust. The bloody hole in his body is still gurgling. What a relief. Zhang Yi, covered in blood, was rescued by the police who arrived first after I called the police. You fogged because of excessive blood loss into a coma, now still in the ICU, did not come out. Jinlov's brother killed red-eyed, indiscriminate attack almost cut the police rescue. Jinlov was aside the sniper killed on the spot. Jinlov scared nestled in the police car, trembling. But I know that she is not afraid. She is excited. She quietly sent me a text message. She said, "Sis, I'm free, I'm really free." Yes, her stepmother and older brother are a cloud that hangs over her head, that will never dissipate, that will always completely shatter her hopes for life, just as her life is picking up and the sun in the sky takes pity on her. The past experience of being sexually abused by her older brother hadn't beaten her, but the blood-sucking, the destruction of her chances of getting on the right path over and over again, had driven her to the brink of extinction. If I hadn't shown up, all that would have awaited Jin, it would have been a gruesome death. Sis, don't worry, on the police side, I'll take care of it. The cell phone I prepared for her is the read it after reading kind. It won't leave traces on the internet. Turning off the screen, my daughter looked at me in disbelief. Mom, why are you so happy all of a sudden? I can't solve this problem. I'm not happy at all. I stroked her head. Come on, Mom, teach you. I took my daughter to slowly solve the OU problem. Almost half an hour later, my everyday cell phone rang. Is this Mr. Han Xinfu's wife? I heard footsteps coming and going on the other end of the phone and knew that it was the hospital's emergency room calling me. I am. What can I do for you? The doctor's tone was grave. Mrs. Han, can you please come to the city's First People's Hospital now? Your husband has been suddenly and tragically injured, and we need you to sign the critical notice now. I'm sorry. I hooked up my lips and laughed out tears, speaking in a voice still so infinitely miserable. After all, my daughter is about to take her final exams. I have to give her remedial lessons. Education is important. After saying that, I hung up the phone and sent a friend circle in the meantime. The general idea is that I never thought that my husband would cheat on me and make such a scandal. I really have no face to the ancestors of the Han family, and by the way, I also put a proof of purchase of land, which implicitly expresses that the family really has no money, and the land can't be sold for cash for a while, and I still have a daughter to raise, and all of this is my helplessness as well. Hackers, in the first time to play with, stabbed my circle of friends on the hot search. With me as the legal wife of the real hammer, Han Xinfu derailed, but also made a small for love killing, became the nail in the coffin of the scandal. Of course, netizens sympathize with me as a mother who struggles to hold up her family and has to hide the news of her father's death from her daughter. How innocent the first was. I was just a single mother struggling to hold up a family. So I resolutely in the first place to Han Xinfu position for what seems to be a loss of some shares. By the way, I handed over these shares to a professional trust organization and professional managers to take care of. As for my daughter, do not want to give her pressure. She just needs to live a happy life. The future, no matter which way she chooses, is a life of ordinary or inheritance of the company, the right to choose in her. Han Xinfu funeral day. Came a lot of surface sisters. They did not forget to see my jokes at the funeral. I took my daughter, half not show feared. That brat who had been bullying my daughter was scowling at my daughter at the funeral. His mother even taunted me. Really know the face of the people, do not know the heart. We all thought that Han Xinfu is a good person. Did not expect, he even played outside so flower, gave you several cuckolds, and now also died, sister. What should you do in the future days? What should I do? Of course it's to live happily with a $10 million inheritance. Early in the first time I found Han Xinfu cheating, I did not move to encourage Han Xinfu. To both of us bought a huge policy. Asked is worried about 100 years after the daughter did not rely on Han Xinfu patriarchal, never thought of letting his daughter inherit the family business, naturally agree with me. I drilled the hole in his mindset and successfully took $60 million in compensation. So when the asshole kid's mother tried to press me, I cried out with tears in my eyes. I don't know what to do. Good thing he bought high insurance for our whole family when he was here, and now he has more or less paid out a little bit. Not much. It's just $60 million after tax. Together with $20 million worth of trusts, we mother and daughter also have enough to live on, in short, without having to reach out to ask people for money and beg for food. The asshole's mother's face turned green with flushed. I went on to cry. Nui nui strive. This time the final exam first place, Han Shinfu if you know, can also rest in peace. The comparison between housewives is nothing more than children and husbands. Dead husband, I have a huge inheritance, but also do not have to reach out for money like her, my daughter and more than her son to compete. Seeing her turn around and severely beat up the asshole, I was in a good mood, pulling my daughter's hand toward the cemetery outside. In front of the car, a black suit of Jin E changed the usual softness, short hair sharp and sprightly. She pulled open the car door for me. Ms. Chen, where to? She called out. Ms. Chen, not Mrs. Han. Right now, her identity is our family's special assistant, helping us mother and daughter to take care of our lives, and at the same time, she's still in the process of adult self-testing, and when she gets her degree, she'll also be studying abroad with my financial support afterward, and she's the last line of protection I have for my daughter. If my daughter inherits the company, she is the best helper. If my daughter lives in style, she is the best professional manager of the company. She is very smart, a good seedling dragged down by her family of origin. I combed my daughter's braid for her and smiled from the bottom of my heart. Go to the supermarket, buy some delicious food and celebrate.